Hello everyone. Welcome to another 5G Watch. This is Tavon.
And this is Hope.
Today we're going to talk about the fast tracking of 5G. Get ready, it's coming soon. Despite the scientific studies and ongoing protests that prove 5G is not safe, the rollout of this new technology is being fast-tracked. We'll look into some of the reasons why 5G is rolling out so fast, while other much-needed public services such as road reparations are left unfunded.
That's right, but before we get started, we just wanted to make sure that you all come over to our website, realspeaks.com, because as you know, YouTube, Google will not notify you when there's a new video that comes out.
Won't.
So the best way to know is to go to our website, realspeaks.com, click here on the subscribe button, and sign up for our free mailing list, and that way every new show will be delivered directly to your inbox. Also, we wanted to tell you a little bit about some of our products that we know that you're going to love, that we sell to support ourselves and help to support the show.
So we provide our home decor for EMF Protection products. If you go to ftwproject.com, that's our Fix the World Project Morocco website. There you can get these EMF protection products such as our phone shields for EMF protection. We also have our sleeping pods. Those are quite popular. You want to have those if you have difficulty sleeping at night and don't want to take pills. You know, this is a good way of buffering some of that, taking some of the EMF radiation off your body while you're trying to get a good night's rest. Again, we have some special offers for our things like the phone shields. They come in different colors and they're for all types of phones, all models of phones. In addition, we have other special offers as well for our items like our charge plates. Our special offers are up to 75% off on all of our different products. Again, we have pyramids to grid your property and for your garden. And we have the combination of all these different products available in our special offers page.
And we make all of these pieces by hand ourselves, and we ship all over the world, and worldwide shipping and door-to-door tracking is included with every single order. Also, we'd like to tell you about our book. Tavon and I wrote a book called Forbidden Tech, and we basically took all of our life's work and all the information on the stuff that we do, and we put it all into this one book. Among the many topics covered in this book, you'll learn about free energy, patents, social scandals, murders and cover-ups, engineering basics, cars that run on water, surveillance, gang stalking, energy weapons, and viable solutions to protecting yourself against them. We've cut out all the fluff and brought you right to the heart of the matter. We have our book available in an ebook format for instant download. That's $9.99. We also read the book out loud to bring the information to life in our audiobook. That's $14.99. There's a video course that goes along with this information for $19.99. And lastly, you can order the book on Amazon, the printed book, for a special sale offer of $35. All right, so let's dig into this episode of 5G Watch. In the past few shows, we put out some videos that show all of the studies and reports around 5G, how it's not safe for humans and how many are protesting the rollout. But just in case that you thought that those protests were effective in slowing down the rollout of 5G, we wanted to put together some information in this show to show that 5G is indeed on the fast track and they have every intention of rolling this out everywhere. So first we're going to look at a couple of articles from the FCC.
Okay, and this article is from AEI.org. The FCC fast-tracked 5G wireless now proposes the same for cable. Now this was in July 15th of this year. The Federal Communications Commission, or FCC Chairman Ajit Pai, promised to remove obstacles to broadband deployment and close the digital divide. And it is happening. The FCC's 5G Fast Plan fast-tracked the deployment of the next generation of wireless technologies. A proposed order that will be voted on in the Commission's August meeting should do the same for cable technologies.
So it makes a link here. So it talks about how they're definitely fast-tracking it.
Yeah.
But it actually has something called the FCC's 5G Fast Plan. So let's go and click on that and see what information we can glean from that.
Okay.
This brings us to another article from them called 5G Wireless, When It Makes Sense to Regulate. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, will vote later this month on an order to accelerate wireline and wireless broadband deployment by removing barriers to infrastructure investment. It offers guidelines to states and municipalities on covering costs of site and attachment rentals, processing applications and deployments of the rights of way, measurements to maintain aesthetic and technical requirements, and shot clocks to ensure timely government responses to deployment requests. So that's just a whole bunch of fancy talk to, they got a lot of money behind this, and they're
Right.
moving this out fast, and they're going to pass all different kinds of bills and legislation and acts in order to make sure that this infrastructure for 5G goes out as fast as possible.
Okay.
And this is back, we just read from 2018, September 2018. So we can see the progress that it's taken. And just to show that there have been bills and laws passed in order to, like they said, remove the barriers, make sure that there's nothing standing in the way of getting this up as quickly as possible. Here's an example. This is the Mobile Now Act. It's a bill to provide opportunities for broadband investment and for other purposes. So you can just go ahead and read through that if you want, but this is one of the different legislations that they're using in order to roll out this technology. And we want to just bring up one example. We're seeing a lot of articles like this, but here's one example of how they're putting up lots and lots of towers despite what's going on.
Right, so this article came out last year from althealthworks.com. California is fighting 50,000 new 5G cell towers linked to cancer risk. Bills in these states will permit their installation in your backyard. Modern technology brings new health hazards with many of its innovations chasing the next big thing. It often comes out before it's properly studied, and any health concerns are swept under the rug over the pursuit of money.
Right, and as always, we will have links to all of these different blog posts in the blog article that goes along with this show. But what we want to talk about now is that the companies in charge of rolling out 5G, which is also part of it's part of the telecommunications industry, right?
Yes.
But these companies, they're very aware of the health risks and dangers around this kind of technology, and they're just kind of bulldozing through and ignoring the dangers and the risks, even though so many people have been trying to bring it to everyone's attention. We want to just remind you of a video, of a speech put out by Tom Wheeler, who was the chairman of the FCC. All right, so who's Tom Wheeler? Thomas Edgar Wheeler is an American businessman and politician. He was the 31st chairman of the Federal Communications Commission and a member of the Democratic Party. He was appointed by Obama. Right, so we're going to hear a speech of his that he gave that kind of became infamous around the rollout of 5G. This is an interesting video. There'll be a link to this below as well. But this video shows his speech, but over on the right-hand side, there's some very interesting things that are written out for the viewer to read while Tom Wheeler is saying what he's saying. So check this out.
The big game changer is that 5G will use much higher frequency bands than previously thought viable for mobile broadband and other applications. Such millimeter wave signals have physical properties that are both a limitation and a strength. They tend to travel best in narrow and straight lines, and they do not go through physical objects as well. But brilliant engineers have developed new antennas that can aim and amplify signals. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive, requiring massive deployment of small cells. I'm confident that the actions will lead to a cornucopia of unanticipated, innovative uses, and will generate tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important, because it means that U.S. companies will be the first out of the gate. And that is why 5G is a national priority, and stay out of the way of technological development. Unlike some countries, we do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate The future has a way of inventing itself. Turning innovators loose is far preferable to expecting committees and regulators to define the future. We won't wait for the standards. We're already seeing the industry gearing up to seize this opportunity. Verizon and AT&T tell us they'll begin deploying 5G trials in 2017, and the first commercial deployments they're talking about are expected in 2020. And we're not done. As part of our July 14 action, we also plan to ask for comments on opening up other high-frequency bands. Many of the high-frequency bands that we will make available for 5G currently have some satellite users, as well as some Defense Department applications, or at least the possibility of future satellite and defense users. This means sharing will be required between satellite and terrestrial wireless, an issue that is especially relevant in the 28 gigahertz band. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way. If something can be connected, it will be connected. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers. We must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole provenance of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country. A lot more antenna siting decisions by local governments and tightened our shot clock for siting application reviews. America's local governments will play an important role in determining how we fulfill this national priority. You can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet to be imagined. Tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important.
Now, just in case you're listening to this on the podcast, I wanted to read out loud the points that the maker of this video writes out on the side here. As Tom Wheeler is talking, he kind of says, in other words, what he means is this, and this is the dangers.
Ultra high frequency radiation from 24 to 100 gigahertz or more.
Aimed and amplified signals.
Massive deployment of towers.
Raking in billions of dollars, and that's important because we're going to show that in a little bit.
No standards, no testing. Anything goes, basically.
Trial deployment in 2017, so obviously they've already done that. Share with satellite and military ops.
Everything and everyone must have a microchip and IP, internet protocol, IP address, like for the Internet of Things.
Yep, all areas, including rural, saturated with radiation, and we just covered that in the California Fire Show.
Right.
About how the radiation from 5G can activate and explode the smart meters with the flammable chemicals.
As you heard him, he mentioned something about trying to get local governments on board. In other words, bribe the local government representatives.
And last but not least, fast track all local deployments, which is what this particular show is about today. Now we're going to run through a series of slides, and you can feel free to pause the screen and read the slide for yourself. But the point of this is we want to bring to your remembrance that companies, they not only know about the dangers of wireless technology, but this is before 5G started rolling out. Cell phone companies knew that cell phone radiation was causing horrible health problems. So much so that they had tons of lawsuits that were damaging these companies financially. So what they had to do was they had to write into their clauses and their paperwork for their investors different things saying that, we refuse to cover any medical damage, but it's written into their contracts for these major cell phone companies. Here's one from Verizon, AT&T, which says, unfavorable litigation or governmental investigation results could require us to pay significant amounts. And by the way, these all come from a source called ehtrust.org, so you can go look at them yourself. China Mobile Limited.
and Microsoft with its annual report back in 2014. Now, this is one of their quotes here. We have assumed responsibilities for these claims as part of the NDS acquisition. The lawsuits also allege an industry-wide conspiracy to manipulate the science and testing around emission guidelines. Now, that's back in 2014.
T-Mobile, which states our business could be adversely affected by findings of product liability for health and safety risks from wireless devices and transmission equipment, as well as by changes to regulations and RF emission standards.
Nokia also. This is one of their quotes. This is in the 2014 annual report as well. An unfavorable outcome of litigation, allegations of health hazards associated with our business could have a material adverse effect on us.
Here's an interesting court case from the Supreme Court of Italy. It was a ruling in 2012 that a man's brain tumor was caused by cell phone use.
Now this one is from the Lloyd's of London underwriter in 2015. It excludes any coverage associated with long-term exposure to non-ionizing radiation. So, investors would need to be informed of that. And this is their quote. The electromagnetic fields exclusion, exclusion 32, is a general insurance exclusion and is applied across the market as a standard. The purpose of the exclusion is to exclude cover for illnesses caused by continuous long-term non-ionizing radiation exposure, i.e. through mobile phone usage. So they're already telling you that this is from long-term non-ionizing radiation exposure.
Here's one from Great American Insurance Group. A special environmental liability insurance policy is needed to cover electromagnetic radiation. This insurance covers bodily injury, property damage, legal expenses, and cleanup costs resulting from pollution conditions associated with a covered location on a claims-made basis. The definition of pollutants includes mold, Legionella, electromagnetic fields, and methamphetamines.
Oh, fascinating. This is another example of insurance protects the phone, but not the person. However, damage to the phone is excluded if it's from EMFs. And it goes on the list. Coverage excludes pollution. Pollution is defined as the discharge, dispersal, seepage, migration, escape, or presence of pollutants. And pollutants means any solid, liquid, gaseous, or thermal irritant, or contaminant, including smoke, vapor, soot, fumes, acid, alkalis, chemicals, artificially produced electric fields, magnetic field, electromagnetic field, sound waves, microwaves, all artificially produced ionizing or non-ionizing radiation and or waste.
So you can see that these companies, they know
Yes.
this is not good for people. So they have all these little legal loopholes that they have to write in order to get out of being accountable or liable for these things.
Yes, that's right. So what you're seeing the trend here is that the wireless phone companies or insurance companies will provide no coverage for microwaves.
And here's just another one. This is from Singular Wireless Phone Insurance. No coverage for microwaves. Right, so to understand the agenda behind why they're pushing so heavily for 5G to roll out so quickly, we need to look at two specific areas: money and Agenda 2030.
Okay.
So first we're going to just go back to our good friend Barry Trower. We showed him last week on that show. Again, Tavon, who's Barry Trower and why should we listen to him?
So again, Barry Trower, he started to disclose information about the harmful effects of microwaves, being well-trained and experienced as a ex-Royal Navy technician whose sole job was to maintain and repair microwave equipment, also as an ex-MI5 agent, so he's very familiar and experienced with this technology and what it can do and its damaging effects. So he basically goes on seminars and travels around the world to spread the message to get people to stop using the technology in its current form.
And again, this comes from a fantastic interview with him, which you really should watch the whole thing, called Barry Trower, The Dangers of Microwave Technology.
So we have the industry admitting that their technology is causing disease.
Cancer.
We're
And illnesses, yes.
we're seeing children being effective in hyperactivity.
Yes.
Why then do we still have this technology? What's stopping it being removed?
The industry is believed to be earning some 3 trillion United States dollars a year. $3,000 billion a year. And it is my opinion, I will have an opinion because it protects you legally, it is my opinion that when you have that amount of money coming in, I mean, just imagine on a daily basis how much is flowing in.
Yeah.
You have the ability to not only hire Land Rovers full of top lawyers who can argue cases for you, you can buy governments and you can threaten people with all sorts of things because you have so much power. And the allies of the industry are the secret services of the governments, hence the governments.
Yes, I mean, and the interview just keeps going, and you know, just sit through the whole thing and just take it all in. But I mean, there you have it. A $3 trillion industry globally. I mean, just 1% of that. You know, well, what can a billionaire do with those resources?
You know, I find it kind of uncanny how it appears to me sometimes, maybe it's just me, right? But it appears to me that people, they skip over the finances behind stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They just look at what a person says, what a person's doing, what they have an opinion about something, but they don't seem to pay much attention to the money behind this stuff. And if you just follow that money, you'll get all the motive.
Right.
You'll get the whole agenda. You'll understand why things happen,
Mm-hmm.
why things don't happen. And this is what's so interesting to me, that people can just skip over. They look at the result, but they don't look at the origin. And 9 times out of 10, the origin is money.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a little bit of a recap, and we're going to go back to the show that we did exposing how 5G and its rollout is connected to the Extinction Rebellion movement,
Mm-hmm.
which has kind of died down a little bit because they don't have the big protests going on, it seems. But in that show, we show how the leader of the Extinction Rebellion movement is part of an organization that's funded by the telecommunications industry.
Yes.
Now, this is how it ties it all together so that you can see how this whole global climate crisis is being used as the reason why we need to have efficient, energy efficient, smart technologies like 5G.
Mm-hmm.
So it's saying because, you know, the earth is dying and there's not enough time and we're running out of oxygen and there's too much CO2, therefore we have to have all these new technologies, which is like putting pressure on the public to accept them and to
Right.
not look at the fact that they're dangerous.
But there's new technologies in the way of these wireless devices, not new technologies as far as energy efficient heating generators or anything like that.
Oh yeah, and don't even get me started
Yeah.
on that, because there's plenty of technologies that are not 5G that won't kill you and microwave you, that are very efficient, that they have suppressed on purpose because they're a direct threat to the energy
But they're not
industry.
going to talk about those things.
No, they won't talk about that. Instead, there's this agenda which is very much connected, linked into Agenda 2030,
Yeah.
which, the way I always see it, is depopulation of the planet.
Well,
That's
also,
that's how I see
you're
it.
supposed to cut your consumption of energy as part of this agenda as well.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and do a recap showing you the financial connections of how all of that funding is used to create bogus movements like Extinction Rebellion in order to force people into accepting 5G as an answer to the climate crisis. This is the leader or the lead spokesperson for this Extinction Rebellion movement. Her name is Gail Bradbrook, and she works for a charity called Citizens Online. Citizens Online was set up by Gail's ex-husband, John Fisher. And this is John Fisher. He's the CEO. And this is from Gail's profile on the Citizens Online website, which has, since her recent development with Extinction Rebellion, this has been removed, but someone kept a screenshot of it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Okay. From this profile, you can see right here where it says that she worked with a company called EE. This is the company EE, and EE is responsible for rolling out 5G in the UK. If you look on EE's website, you will see the plan for where they're expecting to roll out 5G all over the UK.
It's like complete immersion.
Everywhere. And here's a map which also highlights their plans for where it is that they're going to roll out 5G. Now, we want to cover a couple of definitions here because you will see some wording in here. This company, Citizens Online, they use terms known as digital inclusion and universal access. What these are, they're actually euphemisms that are actually referring to the rollout of 5G.
Okay.
As you will see here, this is from Verizon.com's website, where it says 5G can trigger social benefits like digital inclusion. Also look down here at the bottom, it says 5G literally has the potential to start the fourth industrial revolution. This is the name of the movement or a business concept, fourth industrial revolution. That will come up later on because you'll see that that's how they're branding this movement. Now, in the agenda that's written by Gail's Citizens Online charity, it states that they want to have the power to influence funding streams of any government services who are already strapped for cash and struggling to provide services as punishment for not complying to the digital inclusion agenda.
Wow, that's amazing.
It says it right here. They say they want to audit government departments, local, regional, and national, for digital inclusion activity, ICT-proof programs, and have powers to influence funding streams. They're pretty aggressive about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like they want to be above the government.
Absolutely. So you can imagine if this thing goes through, then the governments would be under their control because the governments will do whatever they say so they don't lose their funding.
And there would be smaller government bodies would be extorted.
Now, Gail gave a speech, and in this speech, she actually revealed two huge pieces of information. So in this speech, she admits that Citizens Online are secret agents with an agenda. Listen to this. She says, "Let's come clean about Citizens Online and our staff. We describe ourselves as an independent national charity focusing on the use of ICT by socially excluded communities, but it's all just a cover. In reality, what we actually are secret agents with one purpose in life, to find out what government is really doing with the digital inclusion agenda."
It's just a very strange thing to say.
But then she says this. She says, "So who done it? Who really is the government's digital inclusion unit? This investigator begs your indulgence for the arrogance that could be displayed here when I say that I believe Citizens Online have played that role, unofficially and certainly not paid for by government. Who has paid for it? Industry. Our Alliance for Digital Inclusion Partners has understood the importance of the strategic coordination role alongside the deliveries of projects on the ground. AOL BT, Cisco, IBM, Intel, Microsoft, and T-Mobile are all supporting this work. So in the same speech, she just admits that they're funded by the telecommunications industry. This is the same industry that's rolling out 5G across the globe. She goes on to say, so a plea to the new government: see industry as our partners and not as cash cows, and value the knowledge of Citizens Online and our third sector colleagues. We had to work hard to get it. We've found some other forms of funding, and as we're on the topic of funding around Extinction Rebellion, they had a crowdfund that raised £305,000.
Okay.
Okay, they
Right.
did that on fundraiser, and most of the people that contributed to that campaign were anonymous.
Anonymous.
And that's a great way to funnel money into something anonymously. Some people say it's money laundering in some
and
cases.
no one raised any community guideline strike concerns.
No. A lot of crowdfunding these days, they all get reported. Unless you're part of this agenda, then this is how they can crowdfund. They can fund things, right? But what's all this being used on? Well, there was an article that came out recently that we covered in one of our current event shows about how the Extinction Rebellion protesters are getting paid £400 a week.
Sounds very similar to the Soros crowd.
Absolutely. Here's that article, how Extinction Rebellion climate change zealots, including a baronet's Cambridge-educated granddaughter, are paid $400 a week to bring mayhem to our streets. And you can see some of the crazy things that they do. We'll go through that a little bit later as well.
Right. So they're not volunteering. A lot of these people are paid to show up and do something at the event.
Oh, there's nothing spontaneous at all about all these protests. This is a movement. It's funded. These people are paid to go and do these crazy things. But we're going to show you why they're doing this and what it has to do with 5G. First, let's go back to Citizens Online. And many of the directors and trustees of Gale's Citizens Online charity just so happen to be people who run companies that will make an absolute killing in profit in the rollout of 5G.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
Okay, we're going to look at a couple of them. This is Charles Lowe. If you just look, this is from their website saying these are our trustees. He's one of our trustees. And what does he do? He works for something called Health Management Applications. This is the assistive technology program for 4 years, during which sometime 3,000 people had telecare installed in their homes. And the borough began telehealth implementation following Charles's winning whole system demonstrator status from the Department of Health. So it's it's smart technology installed in homes.
Right. Okay.
Okay? 5G is not just 5G. It includes all the smart technology. It includes the smart meters.
Yes.
All of these different things that 5G is meant to power.
It's
right?
the 5th generation of wireless technology. It is the Internet of Things.
So here's another one of their trustees. This is Lord St. John of Bletsoe. He's a trustee of Citizens Online, but he also is the director of a company called TIVAC Orbital Networks Limited, Satellite Solution Services. So as you can see here, this is Lord St. John of Bletsoe, TIVAC Orbital Networks Limited, Satellite Solution Services. Here's TIVAC. It's the world's leading provider and innovator of nano and micro satellites. Headquartered in Irvine, California, we provide end-to-end satellite solutions to governments, commercial organizations, and universities. And then here's another article talking about that 5G, Wi-Fi 6, and nano satellites. Cisco pushes total coverage. So he's a big figure in the rollout of 5G. And he's the one who's the trustee of the Citizens Online. Now, Gail spends a lot of time at events where she networks with telecommunications oligarchs such as Anthony Walker, who is the chief executive of the Broadband Stakeholder Group. And this is a report put out by them called Lowering Barriers to 5G Deployment. This report makes recommendations to industry, central government, and local authorities. The Broadband Stakeholder Group is made up of all the biggest telecommunication networks. And you can see them all here. Now listen to this. In this report, they are proposing a dedicated task force to hunt down anyone that does not comply with 5G.
It's just rings of the Communist Manifesto all over again.
This is in this report. I mean, they word it differently, but that's basically what they're proposing. I'll read how they word it. The ensuing creation of the government's barrier-busting task force to enable solutions and develop and implement best practice has been welcomed across the industry. The BSG will continue to engage with the task force, and industry looks forward to progress being made on removing as many of these barriers as possible in order to aid the ongoing and future investments.
Well, there you go. You can see the bottom line and the monetary incentive for this.
Now, there is so much money that's going to be made. These are huge companies.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
They're going to make, I can't even imagine how much money they're going to make. And the other thing that we have noticed is that it's not just in the UK. It's all over the place now. It's in all these different Western countries. For example, in the US, we're hearing reports of how fast these towers are going up.
Yes.
Which is just, it's uncanny. It's extremely suspicious to me because, I mean, you've got failing infrastructures, you have all kinds of needs and all kinds of problems, but none of that stuff gets repaired. It goes on for years and years and years without getting repaired, and it's falling apart, and there's power outages and all these other things. But 5G towers, bam, they're up like that.
Yeah, that's right.
As quick as possible. You know that there's an agenda there.
All of that metal and all of that copper cabling.
Those towers went up fast because they're in some kind of crazy race. They want to be the leaders in 5G, which is, it's not even shown to have faster internet.
Yes, and also this technology has not provided one proof that any of it's been tested.
Well, yeah, there's a whole bunch of scientific reports that show how dangerous this is, and we will be doing that in another video because we want to keep these videos relatively shorter. So maybe next week we'll go over those reports. But this is a giant industrial move, and they're bullying the governments into just going along with it.
Right.
And in order to push the agenda, they're putting out these paid protesters to do these crazy things. Extinction Rebellion is the gigantic distraction that's been thrown out there. You see them doing crazy things. You see them protesting. You don't understand. Why are they doing this? They're all paid to do it, and the whole purpose is to try to push this fake message that we don't have any time left.
Yes.
We're running out of time, and we have to do something in order to not be extinct. And what's that something? That something is technologies like 5G, which are going to lower your carbon footprint, according to them.
Yeah.
And smart meters, and there's more documentation that I didn't even bring up for this report, but it's in Agenda 2030, it's in the reports.
It's in the Green New Deal.
It's in the Green New Deal, okay? This is the agenda. They want smart cities and smart things, and they make them sound really nice, right? So they're trying to scare everybody into, we have to lower our carbon footprint because 5G is getting rolled out. They're going to make a ton of money on it, and it's not safe for the public.
No, it's not.
It's not safe. You're microwaving the public. So here are the 3 demands of the Extinction Rebellion movement.
That the government must tell the truth about how deadly our situation is. It must reverse all policies not in alignment with that position and must work alongside the media to communicate the urgency for change, including what individuals and communities need to do.
The government must enact legally binding policy measures to reduce carbon emissions in the UK to 0 by 2025 and take further action to remove the excess of atmosphere. It must cooperate internationally so that the global economy runs on no more than half a planet's worth of resources.
By necessity, these demands mean an initiative similar to those enacted at times of war. We do not, however, hand further power to our government. We demand a citizens' assembly to oversee the changes as we rise from the wreckage, creating a democracy fit for purpose.
So that's what they're demanding. And what do you think they're going to propose that the solution is to do this? 5G. They'll say 5G and smart meters. That's gonna lower our carbon footprint down to the levels that we're demanding.
Well, they just say smart cities, and that's a blanket term to encompass all these things.
Now, there's been a lot of kick up about 5G, but here's another thing, okay? We're doing this show because we realized there was 5G awareness all over the internet. And this is an important part, right? There was 5G awareness all over the internet. This was like back in April, May, June
2019.
of 2019, like those months around there. People were talking about it. They were saying the dangers of 5G. And then all of a sudden, like maybe July, August, the mainstream that you can get on the news or on any YouTube videos, it just dropped. You can't find anybody talking about 5G being dangerous at all. It has been completely censored and totally dropped. Not because all of a sudden 5G is safe, but because this particular agenda, the Extinction Rebellion agenda, has just dominated all of the search engines. And we know that YouTube will promote things that they think is relevant news that has an agenda, and they will demote things that they're trying to censor.
Yes.
You know, we've seen that the leader of YouTube actually say that about news. So that's what's going on with 5G. That's why you're not hearing about it as much anymore. Instead, all you're hearing about is Extinction Rebellion. So this is the giant distraction that they have thrown in our faces so that you don't ask questions about 5G.
Yes, that's right.
And with that said, one user, Facebook user, actually messaged the Extinction Rebellion group asking if they could help to stop 5G. And this is the response that Extinction Rebellion gave.
Extinction Rebellion's opinion is that the ecological crisis is far more pressing than 5G. That is why Extinction Rebellion is about the ecological crisis. Extinction Rebellion is not about 5G. You may disagree, but that's the way it is.
They're not about 5G
No.
because they're being funded by 5G.
5G.
So like I mentioned, 5G is rolling out really fast. And
Yes.
back when we recorded that show, it was interesting because I've always been wondering, like when I see these towers just going up really, really fast, but I look at the rest of the infrastructure in a society, like the roadways, the public transportation, all these different systems that the people depend on in order to have a functioning society, and they're crumbling and they're falling apart. And I used to work for the government,
Yes,
and
yeah.
the line was always, we don't have the budget.
Yeah.
There's budget cuts this year, right?
Right.
So that they tell the people, we know that you pay a lot of taxes for public services, but we can't actually perform or give you any of those public services because we don't have enough money. So this is an interesting concept because recently there was a show on SGT Report, and this was he was interviewing Sophia Smallstorm, and she was talking about a newsletter that she puts out, and she was talking about Agenda 2030 and the fires in California, but she said something very, very interesting about how the road structures, especially the ones out in the countryside, that they're letting them fall apart. And we'll play that in just a moment. But do you want to just tell us, you know, a little bit about Agenda 2030 and how they're trying to get people out of the country and into the cities, and why
Well, that's
would be?
basically the plan. It's supposed to represent the fourth industrial revolution, the Internet of Things. Everyone has to be attached to a smart grid, because under that whole new plan you consume less energy, and it's all for the good of the planet. Also, that means you have to change your way of eating as well. So there's all these restrictions, and to be honest with you, it basically, if you were to follow all the guidelines that they would like to have everyone under, it would cause mass deaths. But
Yeah.
that's what we're left with. And also, it's during a time it just happens to be this super cycle of the grand solar minimum, but that's never factored in. But if you do look at the big picture, it just seems like it's a giant kill grid that ends up, whether it ends up being like accidental, what have you, people will be restricted as far as what they could do to make themselves independent in the way of energy consumption, and having their own independent sources of energy, food, water, clean food, not this GMO stuff, But all that are the things that are being targeted by Agenda 2030.
So the way I think, like, I have like a picture of what they want is like everybody in these like stack and pack apartment buildings,
Right.
living on top of each other in really small spaces, kind of like they're doing in Japan, like little tiny cubby holes, and they control everything. They can control your lights, your electric, how much power you use,
How much water you consume.
How much water you use.
Everyone goes to a few centralized places for their food.
Yeah.
And the commute, even down to the commute, you probably should even have a car. You take an Uber instead, or you take the public
Right.
transport.
I mean, just complete and total state control over your
Lockdown.
life.
Right.
Now, and you mentioned a lot of people would die. Can you just give us some examples, like, because that's a pretty strong statement, but how could people die in a situation
Well,
like
I'll give you an
that?
example. So, I think the climate in the Earth has always changed. I mean, this is not what it's about, but this push to push that it's your fault. It has a lot of what we're seeing now is this push to levy everything on the individual so that they can't make a decision to survive independent of the government or a technocracy, basically. And so what ends up happening here is, by giving people fraudulent information about it getting warmer and warmer, for example, and that therefore you must consume less energy. If you're in a part of the world where it's actually getting colder and like more harsher climates, hotter summers and colder winters, and the colder winters last longer, but you're using less energy, how are you going to heat yourself in the wintertime, in an extended winter that hasn't happened for 200 years, that none of us have been alive to witness?
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I'm going to go dig up an article right now and pull it up. So here's a great example of what you just said. And this came out recently. This is an article from RT. Freezing to death, unheated homes killed over 16,000 people across the UK last winter, the government watchdog finds. Staggering energy prices are taking a toll on those unable to pay their bills, a UK regulator has admitted, confirming that thousands of people may have died because of fuel poverty and lack of heating during the winter. So there's one example, because we know that if we give all control over to the state in a communist kind of disbursement of you'll get your fair share of electricity and utilities, it never works out. There's never enough. That's why you have people lining up for wheelbarrows of money to get one loaf of bread, and this is how people end up dying in those situations.
And what's really sad about these kind of articles is during the wintertime, things get quiet. Everyone's huddled into their houses trying to stay warm. Or you don't know if your neighbor is struggling for fuel, but they can't afford it. They had to turn off the heater. And again, this is happening with record snowfalls, earlier in the year. And this was last year. It was estimated 16,000 people. But you and I, we have family that, last year, and this was like in Pennsylvania and so forth, the fuel prices for keeping the heat in that home started to hike up. Thankfully, it broke in the spring. The cold snap broke. But I'm telling you, with these hoaxes, when they get people conditioned to think a certain way, like, it's supposed to get warmer and warmer and warmer, but now you are in a 200-year winter snap that freezes you to death. Is the government going to step in there and say, we better re-look at this? I mean, what is it going to take? How many people? What is it going to take for a population? I mean, in America, it's a population of 370 million people, a lot of which are armed, and if they think that they're being lied to and they're seeing what's happening on their doorstep 180 degrees from what they're being told, I mean, what's the outcome from that? So again, this Agenda 2030 stuff, I think people just need to, I think survival is probably going to have to kick in here. And when the weather starts to get more extreme and things like that, just make sure you're prepared. Just make sure you're prepared, and just stick to your family and communities, and just try to inform them and spread the word.
And there's one more aspect to this too I wanted to bring up before we listen to this clip, and that is that when you live out of the city, when you live off grid, there's like a whole homesteading movement going on in America where people are trying to get off grid,
Yes.
provide their own power by solar panels or wind or combination, or heat their homes with wood instead of oil and gas. And because that whole movement is to be independent, is to be self-sufficient. And that kind of person and that kind of household, especially those that have money because they've worked a job, they've saved up, they can do their own business, is the biggest threat to Agenda 2030. It is the opposite of everybody getting funneled into a city, is to have that level of independence. So I'm hoping that people that listen to our shows are those people.
Yeah,
Are those
me too.
homesteaders,
Me
the
too.
DIY people, they build their own things, and they're trying to be as self-sufficient as possible. And we've done a lot of things in our lives. We have our own little homestead situation. We do a lot of food preservation, and we conserve energy, and we build devices that are supposed to be around the free energy arena, to be used in different ways, battery operated, and different kinds of things. So, that's what we're trying to do, and it's the reason why this 5G rollout, the fake, fraudulent climate crisis is such a concern.
We'll
to
have
us.
to see how this evolves, because I just can't see how this is going to get a lot of traction among the population if they're experiencing their experiences are different from what they're being told. Also, again, the industry, they might see this as a $3 trillion global cash cow, but at the same time, they have a whole population globally they're having to try to convince.
Okay, this is Sophia Smallstorm on the SGT report, talking about the road system and how they're letting it fall apart on purpose.
Forming to a global agenda which puts money in their coffers. I mean, all of this building, in some of our cities, they're building not only fancy train stations that look like they're from the next century, but they're building these abutments on the streets, tons of bike lanes. And these abutments, which mean that if you're a car, you have to slow down to 20 miles an hour because the sidewalk sticks out periodically, and you're not going to be able to get by another car coming in the opposite direction unless you're traveling extremely slowly and assessing where that other car is. That's all Agenda 21. And I wrote a newsletter on the roads in America. They are letting the rural roads, they're not even repaving them. They are quoting, we don't have the budget to put asphalt on these country roads. What they really want is they want people who live in the country not to live there anymore, because you can't drive a vehicle on roads where a piece of gravel is going to break your windshield or it's going to ruin your car's suspension, right? And they're going to do that in the suburbs too. They will start letting the suburban roads go to seed because they don't want you living there. So we should be mindful of how they're going to make the suburban life extremely uncomfortable.
And there you have it, folks. We want to thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of 5G Watch. Next week, we're going to have an entire show that is completely dedicated to solutions.
Right.
Different things that you as an individual can do to protect yourself from 5G. We're going to have a list of them. We're going to go through them one by one. And we're going to include just electronic harassment targeting in general, because this has to do with that same area. We've had a lot of people that are targeted individuals that have been writing to us saying, what can I do? What can I do? So we're going to use this opportunity to put together a full show that gives you a whole bunch of ideas on things that you can do to minimize the risks of 5G exposure, along with any kind of microwave harassment that you might be receiving.
Yes, and so having said all of that, stick around for next week's show, and thanks for watching, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.